Now, this next story is from one of our members, and my comments on it will follow. I lost my father all too soon in a young man's life. I'm working on releasing of these inner pains so that I may become closer to source. Shadow work isn't fun. No, it isn't. My father served 3 tours back and forth in Vietnam. And for what? Now I know for what. He was sick as long as I can remember. I had to listen for him and call 911 when he would fall and bust open his head on the kitchen or the bedroom, when the seizures would go further than the familiar staring ones and he would fall right to the ground, shaking violently. My hero's head in my arms bleeding, helpless. It's a lot for a preteen young man to cope with. He was never able to do anything physical with me or work outside on bikes or cars with me once he cut off his fingers in civil service on post again, working for those who wouldn't take care of him and give him 100% medical retirement after he had served his 20 years in the army. And the old army, where retirement wasn't much and benefits kept getting cut and cut, between getting blasted out of a Bradley, which is a tank for those in Europe, hitting his head on a steel hatch on the way up and out to land on his head and neck on the ground, which started his epilepsy, which he hid so he could continue to serve. Agent Orange, that they sprayed at will anywhere and everywhere all over the trips, which we all know. Not being able to hear taps because he heard it so much for those he loved and those he didn't even know. For what, I asked this world? Pieces of paper and resources the dead and dying soul dyers would never see and still haven't. I had only part of the man that went to serve his country proudly, bravely, with valour. You're right, they don't even know the value of life or the meaning of the word valour. I lost my father in 1994 at 19. He was sick for 10 years. But that is a little tapestry of my life I wanted to share with you. It shows the state of mind of the soul dyers that are in the thick of the shit, away from their loved ones in strange places, told to kill it. It's fine because it's for your country or to protect our way of life or whatever other bullshit. I'm sure that particular story is coming back to a number of listeners at this current time. Back in, this is my comments now, back in 2013, I wrote about this on Cosmic Voice, and it drew much ire and was suggestive I was being disrespectful to Americans and those who have served and the military who fought and died for their country. But it's funny how time changes opinions. I said it not to cause attention or create division. I said it because it was the harsh truth. And the American people need to snap out of their military MK Ultra style amnesia of all things military. It's not what we were led to believe. The main bulk of the military have never been on our side since day one. Yes, you heard that right. Fake, prearranged civil wars that did not involve us, but rich elite programs trying to serve themselves. But the people fought their wars of control for them. And as outed recently in the From Russia with Love series, George Washington, you know, the great founding father, was working for the Brits. Thomas Jefferson for the French. In essence, both of them were working for the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds back all parties, you see, so they win. And this type of practice has gone on for far too long on this planet. People fighting wars not of their own making, but they're playing out elite and hidden beings games. That's what's been going on. The Middle East is a war of the past, of the 5 Anunnaki factions all playing out again. This release of information on a mass scale will hurt the psyche of Americans badly when released. They've been educated to worship and praise the all-American conquering military heroes. All cheer, wave flags and waved off our loved ones is all reminiscent of the Roman gladiator sent into the pit and fight to the death, from an overview thinking. As they are sent off to a far foreign land to pursue the quest of control for the psychopathic elites and the former king. But participating through blind loyalty of the wanton destruction of humanity for the twisted amusement of the elites to satisfy globalist bankers, the scavenging and vulture-like jinns, picking over the carcasses of death and looting on a massive scale. That is the reality of being not a soldier, but in a soul dire program. Almost every war was pre-planned. World War II was signed off on and agreed to by America, China, Russia, Great Britain, France and Japan in 1923. Oops. The Dutch-born president, no coincidence, of America, Warren Harding, did that, aided by the Vanderbilt Group, who one of their family members died this week and it became news. Who gives a shit about them? Really? Pictures of it this week rendered looking something like a Cabbage Patch doll. I thought that went out in the 80s. But the Vanderbilts were another family who operated out of New York and harvested everything. So now I don't have any sympathy for any of their family passing. Why do clowns think we should show an interest in their fake famous group dying more than our own kind? So the war, World War II, was planned and agreed to 17 years before it started. 70 to 85 million people were wiped out in that war. Millions more traumatised for the rest of their lives. And that doesn't include the 70 to 90 million Russians genocided in the same period leading up to that war either. History never counts Russians, it seems. There's a lesson in that somewhere. I watched a show this week on the Nevada test site for nuclear weapons and how Vegas monetised it and turned it into a tourist attraction, believe it or not. It defies belief. The most destructive weapon on the planet in modern history, and people just turn up to view it. It's car crash type thinking, and shows how easily the people will go along with their programs of damaging or destroying us. The blowing up of tons of radiation-based explosives, and when the blast went off, they told the soldiers to walk towards it. For source sake. Are we that stupid to follow orders to the point of insanity? Walking towards a nuclear blast. Thousands of soldiers sitting less than 2 miles downwind in trenches as the shockwave rolled over them with no protection. Think about that for a second. Is that not direct evidence they don't give a shite about Americans? Or the several other projects like MKUltra, Hotel California, spraying chemtrails, syphilis, TB and other germ warfare on unsuspecting towns and cities, killing or maiming millions of our so-called own people. Operation Northwoods and Mongoose, stating they would do false flag attacks on Americans to create a reason to go to war with Cuba. But the people clap, wave flags and cheer on this madness. We are the problem, not them, because we comply with it all. During the Cold War, which was fake, the United States spent on average 35 billion with a B a year on its nuclear weapons complex. 35 billion a year, going back to the 1950s and early 60s. It's a lot of money now. Dropping Agent Orange on their own troops in Vietnam. The Iraq War, Americans lost more troops to so-called friendly fire at one point than enemy combat. Do you think that is normal? Do you think these people, and I use that term loosely, give a monkey's ass if your son or daughter dies? Do they shite? And we have to get that into our heads. They don't give a shite. Even when they brought home the dead troops from Iraq, what did they do? They brought them in overnight so the press and no one could see how many they'd lost. Is that the way to honour a war hero? Sneaking lost soldiers in like some secret undercover drug shipment drop-off? Wait until more people find out about Hotel California, as it's called. Missing in action, or prisoners of war, they said, being held by the communist, which means Zionist, Ra-based cult, Viet Cong. Now, they were on American soil all the time, in underground facilities being used as lab rats by National Zionist scientists and other species. Oops. You can check out, but you can never leave, indeed. Hundreds, if not thousands of Americans hoping their loved ones arrived home or were rescued, when they were already home and being used by these MKUltra based psychopaths. Don't believe me? Fine. Carry on feeding your sons and daughters into the harvesting machine then, all under the frankly ridiculous conspiracy theory of protecting your country and its freedoms. You have no country or freedoms. It's all an illusion. And this is what we're fighting to change. Badges for killing people. I, for one, fail to see the honour in that. Honour is in saving people, not killing them. That's the difference between someone who thinks and people who just follow orders, no matter how insane they are. It is, in overview, a total abandonment of our moral duties and obligations as parents to protect your child or children, which the majority have blindly neglected due to the programming of our military is the be-all and end-all. It's not. It has been a death and destruction program that harvests up everything, $989 billion a year to kill and maim people, and hardly anyone says anything. And what's worse is we the people are paying them for the privilege of using our children in that manner. It's effing insane. We've just had Memorial Day, and all dignitaries turn up to pay respect to the fallen, or so they say. It's vacuous and fake in the extreme. All laying wreaths, which are the very symbols of Rome and the UN. Oops. The very organisations who created the fallen to begin with. If it was genuine, they would stop and think the same as I have done in this piece, and work towards a proposal to scrap the harvesting machine known as the US military, which has nothing to do with America, or is it protecting Americans. By law, they are not allowed to do so on our own soil. Check it out yourself. The United States is a corporation started by the corrupted houses people in Vienna, Austria, back in the early 1800s. Again, check it out yourself. United States is not and never was America. As for the military, I would have proposed to scrap their whole budget in its current format and start again. Well, how would we go about that? Well, first, we have to get rid of the neo-hawks, the Zionist warmongers and the harvesting agents, and use the military budget to use all ships, planes and other transport to transport food, water, clothing, housing and energy to the vast number of people around the world who don't have that. Rebuild the towns, cities and infrastructures smashed into oblivion by cowards dropping bombs from high or from afar. Employ all soldiers to be operating in peace, not war. This will aid their rehabilitation program, which will be extensive, and also address some karma. Recycle the vast array of weapon-based hardware that sits in vast desert fields just rotting away, and put the scrap to good use elsewhere. Decommission and ultimately destroy all weapons of mass destruction, particularly nuclear. The thinking behind that was based on an off-world program of the destruction of us all. Decommission the current US Navy as it's being ran by the SSP. Create a new one and initiate them to clean up all of our oceans of the vast amounts of toxic wastes they have dumped in there. Evaluate and assess all research centres, whether it's beneficial to humanity, and destroy all that is not, in particular the bio-warfare labs. Again, that thinking was based on destroying us all, not just communists, Muslims or some other fake created group. It was designed to end us all. Get that into your non-thinking heads. Replace those research centres with research for human progression only. Eliminate the UN entirely and create a new global group based on peace for this planet and a combined global military force with no country having domain or power over the other. All countries must participate and create a planetary force that defends this planet only from external or internal forces. End all land-based wars based on this is Israel or this is Palestine. This whole planet is our home. Settle all the issues out with the ultimate goal of removing the divide and conquer borders so that the people and the fake created cultures are not defined by lines on a map. Evaluate all what is considered new technology. None of it is new, and either release it to the public in stages or completely destroy it if it's not beneficial to mankind. eliminate the stranglehold the military has on another act called the Communications Act of 1934. It has control of all forms of communications, be it landlines, mobile, cable, television, wires, radio and internet. Essentially anything along with frequency waves allied with AT&T and Bell, they own and control all of it. This came in under the Spying Act, which is more of their fake news. Eliminate the duplicity of several agencies linked to and with the military under national security, espionage and safety. We are now aware that whole programme is total fakery. You are all spying on each other's citizens to get around laws, and as for the safety of the country and narrative, we must not let other countries find out what we're up to. That's BS. The people know it now. That is the biggest steaming pile of manure I've ever heard, that other countries may find out what we're doing. Countries do not go to war. They are used at certain times as pawns, and all sides knows what each other has and what each other is doing. In fact, under Five Eyes, which became Nine Eyes and ultimately now No Eyes, they all work together. The CIA, Mossad, the KGB, oh my, Pine Gap, Asian Intelligence, GCHQ and MI5 and MI6, unbeknown to their citizens, have all worked together for the last 70 plus years. Let that sink in. Still think they were protecting us? Like bollocks they were. If we were ever considering real national security, we would not have given weapons and secrets to Israel, who subsequently passed all intel and information to Russia and China. And then worse, they gave nuclear warheads to Iran. Don't believe me? Check it out yourselves. Iran building nuclear warheads is fake news. Israel gave them nuclear weapons back in the 1980s, 1990s. Employ a plethora of people-based private accountants, not in-house or lackeys or Price Waterhouse Cooper or Deloitte, who are globalist establishment stooges, to go through all books and do a full audit which reports back to the President, Congress and the public. Close down or repurpose the thousands of NGO groups spawned out of the MI6 and also the SSP clowns. Slowly release information of all so-called new technology for later possible introduction to the people, which will be open to entrepreneurs, not just government or military contractors. Reveal all that has been built underground and for what purposes and by whom. A full disclosure of crimes with a full disclaimer and no comeback, with the exception of anything connected to children or harvesting. Assemble a military task force in league with other countries and go in and rout out all the drug runners, child harvesters, organ traffickers, adrenochrome traffickers, paedophile operators and cults like NXIVM. There are many more in Mormon, Scientology and other so-called churches. Finally, scrap a number of American bases and turn them into healing centres to aid the PTSD, maimed, MK-ultra'd, drug-addled and poison-injected soldiers, with the goal of eventually returning them to their families. These can also be study centres for soldiers also, to learn new skills for their return to society, all of which comes out of your budget, the military budget, not the people's. We the people paying twice or more for these military programs have had enough of that. When all of the above is started, only then will this person believe the military and the surrounding connections will be on our side, because the above is a real military that protects the people and the planet, and not some jumping jack clown in a Punch and Judy puppet show mired in a globalist psychotic agenda. We're going to have a music break. To that piece of Who Is Addressed To, please take your pick between these two songs. You're either going to be one or the other.